Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really big question, one that democracies all over the world have to grapple with. How do you hold a country together when its people are deeply, deeply divided? We're going to do that by looking at the stories of two very different nations. So let's start with an idea that, kind of makes sense at first. This simple equation, sharing power is just dividing power, and if you divide a country's power, you make it weaker. It feels right, doesn't it? A single, strong hand at the wheel seems like the most stable way to run things.
But hold on a second. What if we've got it all backward? What if trying to hoard all the power for one group is actually the fastest way to break a country apart? And maybe, just maybe, sharing that power is the only thing that can truly hold it all together.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to unpack this basic democratic dilemma. Then, we'll take a trip to two countries that faced this exact problem and took completely opposite approaches, Sri Lanka and Belgium. By seeing what they did, we'll figure out why sharing power is so important. And then we'll look at all the different ways you can actually do it.
Okay, let's get right into it. The thing is, most countries today aren't just made up of one uniform group of people. They are a mix of different social groups, and that amazing diversity can sometimes create some serious political friction.
And when we say ethnic, what are we really talking about? Well, look at this definition. It's about way more than just race. It's about a shared culture, language, history, a whole way of life. And when these powerful identities get into the political mix, governments have a huge choice to make. That brings us to our two case studies. All right, time to meet the two main characters of our story. On the left, you've got Belgium, a small but really complex country right in the heart of Europe. And on your right, there's Sri Lanka, an island nation just south of India. Both are democracies, and both were dealing with some major ethnic divides. First up, Belgium. Now, this place is fascinatingly complex. You've got a Dutch-speaking majority, a very large French-speaking minority, and even a small German-speaking group. But here's the real kicker. In the capital city, Brussels, the French speakers are actually the majority. So that flips the whole national power dynamic right on its head. Okay, now let's hop over to Sri Lanka. And right away, you can see the difference is stark. The numbers here tell a much more straightforward story. There's a huge, dominant majority, the Sinhala speakers, making up nearly 3/4 of the population, and a much smaller, though still significant, Tamil-speaking minority. And this simple difference in numbers would set these two countries on two totally different paths. Let's start with Sri Lanka's story. After it became independent in 1948, it had to figure out how to handle its diversity. Its answer? Simple. Let the majority rule. The path Sri Lanka's new leaders chose is called majoritarianism. And what is that? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's the belief that because the Sinhala community was the majority, they had the right to run the country however they wanted, even if it meant totally ignoring what the Tamil minority needed or wanted. And this wasn't just some abstract idea. Look at this timeline. You can see how this played out in real life, step by step, over years. In 1956, an act was passed making Sinhala the only official language. Then came policies that gave Sinhala speakers a leg up in getting into university and landing government jobs. And finally, the constitution itself was changed to give special protection to Buddhism, the religion of the majority. So what do you think happened? Well, it's pretty much what you'd expect. The Tamil community felt completely pushed aside, alienated. They felt like their language, their culture, and their shot at a good life were all being taken away. The trust between the two communities just started to evaporate. And this is where things get really tragic. This deep sense of distrust didn't just stay as political disagreement. It boiled over. It turned into widespread conflict and eventually spiraled into a long, brutal, and absolutely devastating civil war. The war just tore the country apart for decades. Thousands and thousands of people were killed, and the country's social and economic progress was shattered. It is such a powerful and tragic lesson in how trying to force the will of one group onto another can literally destroy a country's unity. Okay, so that's a pretty grim story. Now let's switch gears and head back to Belgium. Faced with very similar tensions, their leaders looked at the possibility of conflict and decided, no, we are not going down that road. They chose a totally different path. Instead of ignoring their diversity, they leaned into it. They recognized that if they were going to live together in one country, they had to create a system that worked for everybody. Now, this was not easy. It was hard work. They actually had to amend their constitution 4 separate times over 23 years, constantly tweaking and negotiating to find a way to compromise. So what did they actually do? Well, they came up with this really clever, if a little complicated system. In the main central government, an equal number of ministers from both the Dutch and French-speaking groups. A lot of power was also shifted from the center to regional governments. Brussels, that tricky capital city, got its own special government with equal representation. And get this, they even created a third type of government, a community government, just to handle things like culture and education for each language group. And you know, sometimes it's the little things that say the most. Take a look at this street sign from Brussels. It's in both French and Dutch. It's a small thing, but it's such a powerful symbol. It's a daily visual reminder that this is a shared space, a country built on respecting each other, not on one group dominating another. Yeah, it's complicated, but you know what? It has kept the peace.
So we've seen these two stories play out, right? One ends in war, the other in peace. It really makes you ask, why is sharing power such a good idea? What's the big deal?
Well, there are basically 2 big reasons, and I like to think of them as the head reason and the heart reason. The head reason is just smart and practical. Power sharing works. It reduces the chances of conflict, makes the country more stable, and stops it from tearing itself apart. The heart reason is a moral one. It says that sharing power is good in and of itself. It's the very soul of democracy. The idea that people have a right to be heard and that a government is only truly legitimate if everyone feels like they have a stake in it. Okay, so if we agree that sharing power is the way to go, how do you actually do it? Let's pop open the hood and look at the practical toolkit for building a democracy that lasts. Because it's not just one thing, it comes in all shapes and sizes. Turns out there are a bunch of different ways. You can share power horizontally. That's your classic checks and balances between the different branches of government. You can share it vertically between a national government and state or local governments. You can share it among different social groups, just like we saw in Belgium. And you can even have different political parties share power. And that last point about political parties, this cartoon just nails it. It shows the German government as a car with 2 steering wheels. It's a perfect visual for a coalition government. You have rival parties that have to figure out how to share control and somehow drive the country together. It might look a little clumsy, but it means way more people's views are represented. So all of this brings us right back to where we started. The Belgian way, it's complicated, for sure. It's kind of messy, but it brought peace. The Sri Lankan approach seemed simpler on the surface, let the majority rule, but it was a complete disaster. Which leaves us with one final thing to think about. What's more important? A perfect, simple version of democracy that leads to war, or a messy, complicated peace?